Nicholas, I think, who detailed the Noni Madueke interest on Arsenal's behalf. It's accurate, of course, and has been documented elsewhere too, that he is one of the players that Arsenal are looking at. I think Matt Law in The Telegraph originally broke the story some weeks ago, because Arsenal have long been searching for some backup for Bukayo Saka, stroke competition, you could say, or deputising for him when he's injured. And they first looked at Brian and Burmo. They would have had other options too. That didn't work out. He's on course to join Manchester United, and there's no agreement yet, but we expect it to happen at some point. And then, or he'll stay at Brentford. And so, yeah, Arsenal had to look at alternatives. Noni Madueke is among them. I think a lot appeals to Arsenal about that profile because he can play on the other side too. He'll be known to many of the Arsenal players. He's London-based. Chelsea, as we've discussed already, are always open to conversations about trading. They're not averse to them. You see some people just putting the not for sale sign up and blocking any type of communication, and that's not the case with Chelsea on pretty much any of their players, you could say, and therefore it's one that Arsenal are clearly doing some work on. Conversations more on the player side. I don't know of anything club to club at this point. That can change very quickly, but that's accurate at the time of reporting, and we don't know of any sort of agreements at this point. Noni Madueke will have a say in it as well. If Arsenal do really come forward and say we want to make this happen, does he want to make it happen? Does Chelsea want to make it happen? But clearly that's a fluid conversation at the moment. And look, Arsenal are spinning multiple plates and working on the various positions. We know the number 9 is the priority for them. And then they've always wanted to strengthen on the left wing. But they've got Gabriel Martinelli, a very fine player there already. If he was to leave, then you could see them maybe bringing in a top left-sided winger. If he's not to leave, then I don't think so. You know, we've talked and reported on the likes of Rodrygo and Anthony Gordon. I think that's if a Martinelli leaves. I don't necessarily think that that's if he was to stay. Whereas you could look at somebody like Noni Madueke, who could come in and be that backup to Saka on the right. He could be an option on the left, potentially, even if Gabriel Martinelli stayed. And then you've got they're looking at things inside, the likes of Eze has been well reported, and Morgan Rogers, and there are loads of names. James listed them in the deal sheet this week, so I'm not putting any order on them, but we do know that Eze is high among them for that sort of 8-10 role, which is separate to the striker, the left, the right. So look, multiple possibilities here, and we've got to see. You know, we've talked about Chelsea and what they might do if and when players leave, and that's why we're talking about Madueke. What might Arsenal do if players leave? But what if they stay? You know, it might look a different picture, and we're not talking about so many movements. But yeah, back to your original point on Madueke. You know, Chelsea, if he is to go, will be looking for a sizable return. I don't know the exact fee. Some people have reported in excess of £45 million. I'd previously seen it was higher, but you know, not an insignificant sum, and certainly higher than they paid for him, you would imagine. So there's no guarantee, but definitely Madueke is an active conversation.
Well, standstill in the talks for Sesko?
Sam loves transfer bingo phrases like talks are at a standstill. They have stopped.
Haven't they been at a standstill for 18 months?
Clearly, he's a player of interest for Arsenal. They have held talks with RB Leipzig. Staying there at a standstill might just mean that Arsenal are assessing every single one of their options in that position, because they know, as much as they will not, you know, pay total attention to the outside noise from the fans, they will be aware of it. They know they need to get this position right, because it has been the position that Arsenal have needed to strengthen for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So it is a massive, massive window for Arsenal with regard to that position. They're looking at Sesko, they're looking at Victor Gyökeres, but also they are looking at other players that maybe we haven't mentioned yet. And maybe they'll surprise everyone, and the player that they bring in could come outside Gyökeres or Benjamin Sesko. Just to say that they're at a standstill doesn't mean that the deal is off. I still think that there is an interest there. Clearly, Arsenal will have looked at all of these players, and the initial talks they would have had would have been the conditions of a deal. And then they will gather all of their information and then decide which one they're going to pursue. But I don't think it's completely dead in the water, that one, not yet.
Sam, not dead in the water, but Sesko, can you picture him in an Arsenal shirt? Does he seem the most likely?
I can picture it. Yeah, I think it's the riskier of the two often mentioned names, him and Gyökeres. But if you're Arsenal, there's no way you're enjoying the noises coming out of Sporting right now on Gyökeres. Like the president has gone on record very recently to say there is absolutely no way that he will be leaving for 60 million euros plus 10. It was thought coming into the summer that there might be a bit of a gentleman's agreement, might be a 60 million euro as a price tag. That appears to have gone out the window. Player doesn't look like he's very happy about that, but nothing he can do about it. So that Gyökeres situation is getting messier than I think we anticipated, and it's getting more expensive than anyone really hoped it would be, which really brings Sesko back into the limelight here as an option. I still think it's the second best option of the two, but it might be the only one that's genuinely affordable quite soon. Although I will just say the two words that I always say, chaps: Victor Osimhen.
One that's getting the Arsenal fans excited, Tottenham fans and other fans as well, is the possibility of Eberechi Eze. He linked with Spurs last week, and our guest Dan Kilpatrick suggested that he is a Spurs type of player. But, Arsenal thought to be interested as well. Darmesh mentioned him before, Sam. Do you see Eze as a good fit for Arsenal?
Yes, for sure. I think a player of Eze's skill set, versatility and just general class and position is basically the dream fit for Arsenal this summer. And if he was a little bit younger, maybe 2 or 3 years, I think he'd be the ideal target. Not to say 27 is old, but as you can see from the Chelsea model, clubs do prefer to shop in that 22, 23 range. And that's where they like to spend the big money. That's why we're probably going to reach a bit of an impasse quite quickly here, where Eze costs 60 plus million. He's 27 years of age, and everyone just stares at each other for 2 months until someone makes a decision. But Eze, as a footballer, is ideal. Like what I've been calling for the last 6 months, really, from Arsenal, is to sign a player who can complement Saka, and if Saka's not on the pitch, really take that decisive presence and really take the onus and say, this is right, this is my game, I'm going to decide it. That's what Arsenal were really lacking without Saka last season. They need a better alternative, and Eze is that player with the bonus ability to play in a midfield 3 or as a 10 if you need him to, because he has done that for Crystal Palace. So that is a player that can give you so many elements, improve your starting 11 and play 3 positions. That's what you need.
Rodrygo was the other one that had been mentioned quite a lot in the past sort of weeks and months, Sam. You watch a lot of European football as well. If you're going to go one direction for Arsenal, Eze or Rodrygo, who's the better fit?
I don't think you could go wrong with either, really, because they're both excellent and they would both improve the team. Probably the smarter deal here is Rodrygo, and that is not just because he is a Champions League winning winger for Real Madrid, which is quite the prestigious title, but he's also, again, age comes into it. He's 3 years younger, so it's a better longer term investment. He's clearly excellent. He's probably has been overlooked for years because all the players around him are much shinier, much more famous. He's the kind of player that would move for 60 or 70 million and people go, wow, he's even better than I thought. It's because you're all staring at Mbappe the whole time. Yeah, that's the sort of player that he is. So Rodrygo would be the better investment with my director of football hat on. But of course, Eze, not a bad fullback at all, with 5+ Premier League years under his belt and a very known quantity.
Just picking up on that, I don't want to what Sam thinks about this, because Xabi Alonso's come in, and when all of this talk about Rodrygo potentially going to Arsenal came about, the feeling was that Xabi Alonso says, no, I want to see Rodrygo, I want to see all my squad and see how they perform. The last 2 games in the FIFA Club World Cup, regardless of the fact that Rodrygo didn't start, he went 3 at the back, didn't he? And I just wonder whether that would effectively rule Rodrygo out of getting regular first team football if he was to stick to that formation next season, because you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold and Fran Garcia playing as their wing backs in those last 2 games. Where would actually Rodrygo fit in when you've got the likes of Jude Bellingham and Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. and the other shiny players that Sam was mentioning just before there?
It'd